Good morning and greetings from Tampa. It's Winston and it's day 143 of 144 of Walk with Winston. Oh my goodness, can you believe it? Anyway, I just wanted to hop on here this morning and to give a word of encouragement for those of you who are in a season of big changes in your career. I wanted to reflect back on what I believe is probably one of the top 2 or 3 most pivotal changes in my life so far. I plan on being active and vibrant for many more decades to come, God willing. But in my first 50 some years of life, this particular event was the most devastating and eventually the most uplifting season of my life. And so the title today is How Losing My Job Gave Me New Life. So I shared a little bit about this story a couple walks ago. But when I first left college, I was really fortunate to find myself in a career that was a perfect fit for me. I was working for an international nonprofit, and in that work, it was a perfect blend between the corporate world and the world of community engagement and helping people. And it was just such a wonderful fit for me. I could not have even mapped out something as beautiful as that was. In a couple of seasons of that particular career, I was doing community fundraising, and in another couple seasons of that career, I was the leading exec in that particular office, organizing and managing the work of dozens of people. And I loved it. I loved the local impact. I loved the visibility of the work. I loved the community leaders that we got to engage with, and it was just, for someone who is sales oriented and growth oriented, it was the personal growth, the professional growth just were exponential, and I loved every minute of it. But then suddenly, 18 years into that career, poof, it was gone in a day. It was March 15th. I'll never forget it. I came into a meeting and I was told that I was no longer going to be employed by this particular organization. Now, in my case, I could feel something was coming intuitively a few days before, but I really couldn't put my finger on it. But sure enough, on that day, an 18-year career came crashing to the ground. Now, was I responsible for that? In my case, yes. I had a role to play in the demise of that career. I mentioned a couple walks ago that part of the problem with me in that career was that I had forgotten one of the basic tenets of being in that work is, that it's not just your organization, it's the community's organization, and you partner with the community to get things done. And when I say I got a little too big for my britches, I'd forgotten that. I had personally taken the lead of it and considered it my organization instead of the community's treasure. Well, I still didn't think anything I'd done had really, deep in my heart, I didn't think anything I'd done had really betrayed that line. But when you work for a board, it really only matters what they believe about your performance. You work at the pleasure of the board in those roles. And I wasn't pleasing them with some of the approaches I was taking to the work. So, 18-year career that I had worked for and treasured and loved and really sunk my heart and soul into was gone in an instant. To say I was devastated, words can't really even begin to express what it felt like to walk out of that room knowing that my 18-year career was over. It was almost like a slow motion accident that you hear people describe automobile accident, and in that few seconds before impact, it's almost like the movie The Matrix. It slows down so much that you can remember every discrete sound, you can remember so many inputs around you that we take for granted and kind of screen out of our day-to-day life. Well, that day, getting that news was very much like that for me. The entire world slowed down around me. Things were kind of going past me. And I just remember thinking that this is not happening to me. I had to come home, talk to my wife, and tell her, and I was the principal wage earner in my family. I had to tell her, honey, we need to put the house on the market. We're going to lose everything here. It was probably the most single devastating day of my life. Just could not wrap my head around it. So, yeah, it was, when you've done something for 18 years and you've so identified with that work. I mean, I had put my worth is equal to my work, and that was a huge mistake. Something I think a lot of guys do is they tie their worth and work together. We're so identified by the job we hold or the role we do in community and in our vocation. And for me, it was definitely, my ego was so tied to my work. And that was a huge wrench as well, because not only did I lose a source of income, I lost a big sense of my identity in this situation. So I'm getting emotional about it now, and this was coming up on 20 years ago. And it still makes me emotional to think about that day. So anyway, you lose all sense of direction when you lose a job in that manner. And I remember how everyday life just seemed to come to a crawl. And I had a hard time waking up in the morning and getting going for a few days. The shock of it was just so profound. Well, there is a happy ending to this story, and it's one of the reasons I'm sharing this with you. Perhaps you or a loved one or someone you know has gone through the shock of a sudden change in their career. Well, I had been, and this is how great God is for us. He is always preparing us for things in life that we, at the time, can't see a path. And in my case, I had been very interested in how to make our organization more efficient and also way more effective by partnering with sister organizations that did similar work. And so over the prior 2 years before that, I had been getting to know a lot about business process outsourcing. And this is where you take workflows or chunks of work in your organization, you analyze it, you look for efficiencies, you find ways to cut out redundant steps or parts of processes where you're doing it a certain way, but does it make sense? Did anyone even question why we do it a certain way? Well, I've gotten very intrigued by that. And in some cases, you find opportunities to partner with people that is their core competency, teamwork of taking a process like that and teaming with somebody who does that day in and day out is really the great way to go. Well, my curiosity about business process outsourcing and the fact that we had done a fair amount of that and teamed up with a sister organization led to a completely new career 6 weeks after getting that notice. My curiosity and hobby, in a sense, turned into a full-time career. I ended up doing a consulting project with some related organizations to the career I had been in. And together we began to explore how several of these organizations had very similar processes, very similar business needs, and we ended up working on a consulting contract for a few months to just kind of prove out whether this was something that would be worthwhile for them to pursue. Well, making a long story short, of course, the things that we were exploring were not core competencies of these particular organizations, and they were very keen to explore ways to not have to worry about it. And that turned into another contract where I was asked to go raise funds for this particular project by enrolling some other organizations into exploring this particular project. The net of it is, within 6 months, I became the founder of what became the country's first and largest IT social enterprise called UPIC Solutions. It exists to this day, nearly 20 years later, and propelled me in a completely new career that I would have never in a million years sought for myself. When I got the notice that I was being fired and let go for my first 18 years in my career, 6 months later to be on a completely different trajectory, doing completely different work, but with related organizations, it was a miracle and propelled me into a career today that I would not have ever imagined on that first path. So my encouragement to you today, perhaps you or someone you know has had a sudden career change. Maybe it's thrust upon them. Maybe it's not their choice. And in my case, the door was completely slammed. Oh, if you can persevere and keep a beginner's mind and keep your faith that God is going to use this experience for something way beyond what you can imagine. Don't be limited by your past. Be willing to have open hands and to consider how all your different skills and hobbies and curiosities could be used for an even bigger picture. Oh my goodness, friends. I look back on that season, I look back on that moment as one that completely changed my destiny, completely changed the trajectory of my life, and has led to the place that I am today. Hey, you know what's really exciting? I have no idea you know what's really exciting? I have no idea what is to come, but what I have experienced with this particular event in my life is God can use all things for good, even being fired from your 18-year career. Well, it's never too late to begin again. The dawn, I love this time of morning, I love seeing the sky, but it reminds me each and every day that we have the opportunity to begin again. So no matter what you're facing, no matter what the opposition is, we get to start again. And with that, you guys have a great day. I'll talk to you again soon.